Okay, we are live. So today was day 11 of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and I was there and am here to tell you all about it. It was not a particularly eventful day. The defense started out their presentation, excuse me, and they started out with Maxwell's assistant. And the point of this was to challenge the evidence that the government brought in, which was that Maxwell had these strict policies for her staff. She wrote this book of instructions. She insisted that they do way too many, have way too many things to do in a day that they couldn't possibly do. So it's sort of like made her look like a devil wears Prada kind of boss. So here comes Kimberly Espinoza, who started out as Epstein's assistant and then moved on to become Maxwell's assistant. And she came in from California looking very chic, black hair, black suit, and she locked eyes with Maxwell and they were smiling at each other. And you could just tell that there was a kind of relationship there. She had worked in the office of Epstein for 6 years. She had such tasks as setting up his island. So she had sand imported and palm trees imported to his island. And she talked about Maxwell being a tough boss, but she was ready to rise to the challenge. She had 40 things to do a day. She's now an executive assistant, and she would have never been able to do her current job without this experience from Maxwell. And it got really interesting when she talked about the victim, Jane, who testified, who was the one who met Maxwell or was preyed upon by Epstein and Maxwell is a better way to say it, at Interlochen summer camp in Michigan at age 14, and was continually, she was a Miami native and she was brought over to the house on many occasions, testified to having multiple horrible, being preyed on by Epstein and Maxwell multiple times, having orgies over there with other children. I don't know what, there has to be a better word than orgies, but for lack of a better word. And she claimed that she was told that Jane was the goddaughter of Epstein, that Jane's mother called the office many times, and very interesting switch here, that she thought Jane's age was 18. Now, the mother's calling the office. Many times she's visiting the office with Jane, the mother, and yet you're still saying that you thought she was 18. And it seemed to me a very, not very well thought through testimony, because if she's the goddaughter, then it would be okay for her to be underage. She also testified to sending flowers to other women or for Epstein, and that she saw a change in the relationship between Maxwell and Epstein, and that they were no longer together. I don't know why the defense is making such a big deal of that, but okay. She said, she was asked at the end of her testimony if she ever saw anyone under 18 in the office, and she says never. Did she ever see Maxwell abuse anyone under the age of 18? Never. Which is, as you know, if you've looked at any kind of statement analysis, which I find interesting, never does not mean no, but I just, and then she would get to tricky elements of her testimony. She would change from first person testimony to I feel like this. They asked her what she thought of Maxwell's character, and I feel like I learned so much. So it became her feelings instead of what she knew. then, so the big witness that we were waiting for was Elizabeth Loftus. And let me give you a little bit of an idea of what she looks like. Right there. And Elizabeth Loftus is a memory expert, or she calls herself, but she sat on the board as an expert advisor of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. There's no such thing as a false memory syndrome. It doesn't exist in any DSM psychology manual of diagnostic manual. It's really the name of an organization. It was an organization founded by parents who were accused by their children, sometimes adult children, of abuse, of sexual abuse. So she jumped right on board. She's also very connected in with the Innocence Project. She's one of their favorite experts. Now she testified in the Cosby trial, Sandusky, Weinstein, Ted Bundy, also Tim Hennis, she claims to have single-handedly got off. And her whole theory is that memories can be corrupted. You can implant totally false traumatic memories into a person. And so she's equating these things, and I hope to have another, let me just take this down because I can't stand to look at it. She's claiming that, I hope to have another episode on Loftus. She's claiming that things like being lost in a mall, witnessing your parents have a fight, witnessing a traffic accident are equal to being sexually abused. And that's a real problem in her study. Her studies have other problems. She resigned from the American Psychological Association. She still to this day is pen pals with Jerry Sandusky. She just has a very she relates totally with predators and has a disdain for victims, in my opinion. And she did terribly over many days during a cross in the Durst trial. Here, from what I understand, the jury was mesmerized by her theory. She comes in, she has a 47-page resume. She is listed as number 58 in the 2002 list in the Review of General Psychology list of 100 most influential psychological researchers. So she has 1 million awards and accolades and impressive accomplishments behind her. She faces the jury. She makes eye contact with them. She testified she charges $600 an hour. And she wrote a book called Witness for the Defense. And she said she was just as likely to testify for the prosecution. She's only done that once in her entire life. She's testified in over 300 trials. The other 299 have all been for the defense, but she could have just as easily been testifying for the government in this case. And the cross was very short. They used one part of her book that was used in the Durst trial, and she was asked about her book, Witness for the Defense, if she had ever written a book called Impartial Witness. She said no, that was the end of the cross, very quick. But I don't know if it's going to be enough. I was really looking forward to this testimony. I was sorry to say that I didn't think they did a terribly damaging job on cross. And she can be brought down. For example, in the Durst trial, the DA did things like he would purposely get wrong her placement as number 58 and say, oh, you were number 59 on that list. And she was so arrogant, she would just correct him and get very upset. She would get very upset when she wasn't called doctor. He brought out her 47-page resume as a example of her arrogance, that she has to list every single thing she's ever done in her life since 1960 her career started. So she really seemed like a relic, a little bit like maybe the last days of Phil Spector before he killed and went on trial for murder, just living there's a few people who are really music fans who might remember The Wall of Sound, but you're kind of resting on her laurels and with a kind of poor reputation. So I'm happy to say the government didn't win a lot of their objections today. And Lara Pomerantz has really taken over, and she's doing all of the objections today, all of the questioning. Most of the questioning that I saw, I left at 3:30 to come home and do this. And we'll see what goes on tomorrow. So check with me. I'll be here at 6:30 again, and we can talk about what went on in court.